One very frequent response I got, Luka, to your question of what has changed in a significant way. The overwhelming amount of people who feel great about the Bills wide receiver group. And look, I mean, they didn't go nuts on Saturday. Who cares? We've talked about that. Like that Josh
Yeah,
Allen threw 3 passes. The runway was not there for them to go nuts. I get it.
right.
Disney Wife, another one of our favorites. I kind of always thought this, but I think their receiving core is fine. And along those lines, another guy we interact with a lot, Matthew Rose. Where are you at? Here we go. I feel good about Curtis, Shakir, and Coleman leading this receiver group. And then A-Rod Walker, Mr. I am the law. Buffalo does not need to invest any further resources into the wide receiver this year. Okay. I was listening to Joe Biscaglia's podcast while I was mowing the lawn today, and it came out prior to the preseason game, but it was kind of his training camp wrap up podcast. And if you listen to our show, you know, like Joe Biscaglia to me is, I think he has the best feel for like what's really going on in that building and like what the Bills are thinking about certain things. And his read on the receiver core is he really does think that despite the fact that there's names like Brandon Ayuk out there to be available, he thinks that the Bills really are going to look at 2024 as let's see what we have before we go out there and decide we're going to add to it. You know, potentially, maybe you get 6 games into this season and you feel like, hey, our team's good. Receivers kind of holding us back. Let's make a move. I don't know what move would be available at that point. I doubt it'd be Ayuk, but who knows? But I think more so we're looking at like this is what the Bills have, and we'll readdress it next offseason when some of these names we've been hearing about do become free agents, and playing with Josh Allen could be appealing. The receiving core in general, Luka, I have my reasons why I am slightly more optimistic, and I say like slightly more optimistic than I was before camp started. Have you moved off your spot at all, good or bad, on this receiving group since camp and then, you know, a week into preseason?
No, I think I'm pretty. They are what they are, and I believe that to be the case. In nothing, it's going to be a repetitive theme here, folks, for the next
Yeah.
couple weeks. Nothing's going to really get me off that mark. Again, you have to be Victor Cruz against the Jets in preseason. That's what it will. That is the baseline benchmark, Josh, for me to see preseason action and for it to literally change my mind on a player and a situation on a team, or regardless of what position it is. So, it's not like I'm saying that because I'm negative on the receiving group. It's not like I'm overly, excited and hyped about it either. Not to say that I don't love Keon Coleman and I'm excited to see what's going on there. I'm excited to see what Curtis Samuel can be. There's that little bit there, but it's not like I'm sitting here realistically thinking that this is a better group than what they had last year. I have no means to base that off of. In my opinion, it feels irresponsible almost to kind of come out with that, because on what factual foundation do you have to say that at any point in time? Because of these players when they played for different teams or not even in the NFL at a high-end college level, you're going to tell me that they are a better room than what we had last year? I'm sorry. That's going to be an extremely hard argument for you to win against someone like myself. And I don't think it's just myself who I'm a tough negotiator, I will say, but overall, I think that would be a hard sell for a lot of individuals because you don't really have too much to back that up with.
There are people out there that I respect as intelligent football fans that will tell you that this is the best group of weapons Josh Allen has ever had. And I just can't pretend like 2020 didn't happen, where the Bills had 2 all-pro receivers. I can't get there. I don't know what we're doing. And then the next year when they replaced essentially John Brown with Emmanuel Sanders, John Brown was still there, I believe, but just couldn't get healthy. Or maybe he left at that. No, he left at Emmanuel Sanders. Again, I get Dalton Kincaid is probably projected to be better than any version of Dawson Knox we've ever had. Stephon Diggs was amazing. You could make the argument he's the best wide receiver in Bills history. I would not go there, but you could make the argument. That guy has not been replaced by Curtis Samuel, the emergence of Khalil Shakir, and drafting Keon Coleman at the top of the second round.
Right.
Maybe it happens down the line. But I do have 3 reasons why I'm slightly more optimistic, and 2 of them are just like so tiny. And then one I think is somewhat significant. The tiny ones, Shakir. The story on Shakir, the last 2 camps were there would be like a good day and then a bad day, or a good play and then a drop. And you just didn't hear that at all during camp. He was a steady Eddie. And that does build on the second half of the year that we saw from Shakir when Joe Brady took over. And there has always been a concern in the back of my mind, if you're watching on YouTube where I'm pointing, that does Khalil Shakir kind of go the way of Gabe Davis, where it looks really good when he's the third or fourth guy in the pecking order, but when he's expected to step up and be more of a focal point of the offense, you just don't get what you want. It's August, folks. We're talking about July and August, so there's no proof in the pudding right now. But as far as like seeing concerns in July and August, haven't seen that. I'm happy about that. Keon Coleman, you didn't hear any reports in camp about this seeming too big for him or dropping balls left and right. Did he have drops? Yes. Did he have days where he couldn't get open? Yes. But as far as like, oh boy, like they took him in the top of the second round and he does not look ready for NFL action. That hasn't been the case. It looks like he's out there competing, and that's great. Doesn't mean he's going to be great, but at least it's not like, whoa, what is this? Like when Aaron Maben showed up and he looked like a wide receiver, and you're like, this is the guy we're going to sick on Tom Brady? This was our plan? Brian Arakpo was right there. I digress. Third one, I think this one's a little bit more significant. Curtis Samuel. I am very encouraged by what I'm hearing about how the Bills are utilizing Curtis Samuel as kind of a joker. He lines up in the backfield. He moves all over the formation. We did see the screen pass to him on Saturday. And the reason why I say that is, yes, I think most people, when the Bills signed Curtis Samuel, had that visualized as his role. But in the back of my mind, I think back to several Bills players where when the Bills acquired them, I thought about, oh, that'll be neat to see him used in these situations. And it never came to pass. When they trade for Naheem Hines midseason, it's kind of like, now here's a weapon we can unleash on the offense. And the entire rest of the season goes by, and all they can say is, well, he was new to the offense. He couldn't pick it up. What? I'm sorry, what? It's Naheem Hines. He's a veteran. How difficult is your offense? Quite frankly, last year under Dorsey, when they drafted Kincaid as this great tight end that was going to change their offense, and all they did the first 6 games was throw him 3-yard passes. James Cook, his first year, was never utilized as a weapon in the passing game. I feel like there's other examples there, even if you want to go on the defensive side of the ball. Luka, we've talked ad nauseum about how Quentin Jefferson seemed like a really good idea as an interior pass rusher, but they decided to use him as a nose tackle because Star Lotulelei was out with COVID. I understand you need a nose tackle, but don't use that guy. So, different people making those decisions. This is Joe Brady's offense, but I was concerned that maybe the most obvious answer to the Curtis Samuel solution wasn't going to be the Bills' answer. And so far, I feel like they have a good idea how to use him.
The last point with Curtis Samuel is the more, I think you called them out perfectly. First two, you're talking about the other two receivers. It's promising because you haven't heard the negative, and that's good. But the Curtis Samuel one does kind of have that splash to it where has this team finally figured out that they do need that OW, that offensive weapon, that utility weapon, and actually do it on a regular occurrence where there's tape and there's a situation where teams just don't know what to do fully to game plan for such an individual. Because you've pointed it out. There's plenty of recent examples where that was not the case. And, you even had people going back to like Isaiah McKenzie's tenure where it's like, oh, we can utilize him like that because you saw it maybe once or twice, maybe a handful of times throughout a large portion of a season. It's like, just because you see a guy do it 5 times a year doesn't mean that that's someone that you can depend on doing that. It entertains that idea in your head, and then you are intrigued by that idea. But then this team would never actually fully jump into that pool of thought where it's like, we need someone like that. Introducing Curtis Samuel, all of a sudden, it does seem like that idea is there. The connection with Joe Brady, of course, as well, and him, in fact, using him in such a manner does, I think, add to that confidence, Josh. It's just natural to go. He recognized it at this point in time. He's clearly going to continue to recognize it here, you would like to imagine. And then that's something it feels like this offense needs, where you have that kind of utility weapon that you'll do with whatever you can. The thing I'll even add on top of that, just like nice sprinkles on a proper cone, I think Curtis Samuel is the best for that But even if they wanted to, they could use Shakir in that kind of
Mhm.
role as well. You can use other players on this roster in that same role. And I think that is also exciting in its own right. It's lesser about the player in this instance and more about just having that player and idea instilled on the offense. So in case, let's say Curtis Samuel's missing 3-4 weeks, it's like, hey, all right, Shakir, for this time, you're now going to be in that Curtis Samuel role. We're going to now introduce whoever it is, Tyrell Shavers, let's just say, into some magical big slot role or whatever you want to do. Shift the pieces around so that you still have that kind of moving chess piece, offensive weapon, joker role fulfilled as then Curtis Samuel comes back. And I think that does quite literally exist on this roster in a multitude of ways. And that would be exciting to see because you really do need that moving piece around so that the defense can't feel as comfortable understanding what they're seeing in front of them pre-snap.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good call out on Shakir. I think there's this idea that Shakir is like the slot only player, but there's a much better player in there. He's a 4-4 guy, and I think he's shown the ability to have some good run after the catch. I think that's very interesting. And then Kincaid and Cook are guys too that can line up all over the formation. So the Bills do definitely have a unique skill set of weapons here. Thanks for watching this clip from Bills Chat. For the full episode, you can find the link in the description. While you're here, we would love it if you took the time to like and subscribe. That way you'll never miss when we upload new content to Bills Chat on YouTube.